Welcome to Glen. The purpose of this overview is to examine the primary asset held by Glen Holdings Limited and the potential that it holds in terms of mineral exploration and extraction. In terms of key highlights, Glen resource contains high-grade iron ore, good copper and silver readings, and a limestone deposit of some 30 million tonnes. It has excellent infrastructure and is located within 40 kilometres of a deep-sea port. It's an easy startup with an established exploration team in place and strong management. Drilling is scheduled to commence in September 2010, which could significantly increase the value of the tenement. There is the potential to get open pit mining operations running quickly, and it's an Australian-based iron ore project in mining-friendly Queensland with a transparent land tenure system and increasing demand in world markets. The opportunity, a potential high-value increase for the tenement short term. The Glen tenement is located in North Queensland, 40 kilometres south of the city of Townsville. Townsville is Australia's largest tropical city and a major regional centre for commercial and government services in North Queensland. The tenure for Glen is held within EPM 15654, which provides a permit for exploration through to mid-2012. It consists of 7 subblocks. The area of interest is fairly central to the tenement and focuses on an abandoned mine known as the Glen Pit. This slide depicts the general terrain looking east from west. The special area of interest is the Glen Pit. It represents the most significant mineralisation within the tenement and is described as a magnetite sulphide skarn. This photograph shows the elevation and extent of the Glen Pit. In the 14 years from 1955 to 1969, over 36,000 tonnes of ore was extracted by North Australian Cement Limited. The main commodity was iron, as magnetite in hematite used in the manufacture of cement. In 1969, North Australian Cement Limited was purchased by Queensland Cement Limited, who surrendered the tenement and abandoned the mine. The tenement was virtually laid dormant since until recent time. In terms of a historical review, government records going back to 1920 showed some copper mining on the property, although no production records were located. And in that period, 1955 to 1969, there was the extraction of ore for the manufacture of cement. From the time then through to 2007, the tenement laid fairly dormant. In the early 70s and early 80s, exploration in the district shifted to uranium, and then in the 80s and early 90s, the focus shifted to gold exploration. Of importance is the work by Solomon Pacific on the property, when in 1994 a report was made that there was an estimated total tonnes for the main limestone lens on the property of 30 million tonnes. In 2007, the tenement was taken up by Australian Gold Holdings Limited, who carried out a ground magnetic survey and a soil survey. They were seeking a joint venture at the time, but went into receivership in October 2008. Glen Holdings Limited picked up the tenement in 2010. A report by Australian Gold Holdings geologist in October 2007 reports, "There is no reason to suggest that the magnetite terminates shallowly. Drilling by NACL in the early 70s suggests at least 35-metre depth. The drill holes terminated in magnetite. This magnetite prospect can be quite rapidly brought up to production stage." Glen Holdings planned 7 to 8 100-metre drill holes in September 2010. In 2007, Australian Gold Holdings engaged TerraSearch, a specialist mineral exploration, geology and computing company based in Townsville, to carry out a ground magnetic survey and an extensive series of soil sampling. The report is an extensive document covering 265 pages. This presentation seeks to provide an overview on the essential elements. Previous to this, the subject Glen tenement had not ever been properly mapped to understand its potential. The ground magnetic survey had 50-metre line spacings and had a GPS on the magnetometer. The lines had lengths varying from 600 metres to 2 kilometres for a total of 105 line kilometres over an area of 5.15 square kilometres. An interpretive geological map of the surveyed area shows multiple resources. Structurally, the area is complex with several major northwest faults defining the unit boundaries. From the ground magnetic survey, they produce numerous visual representations, and in particular, they produce this figure 54, simplified magnetic interpretation, which identifies an extensive magnetic domain across the surveyed area, which is bounded by the red lines over a distance of in excess of 5 kilometres. The area that is designated as the strong magnetic body is the vicinity of the Iron Glen pit, and then to the west and northwest of the pit, approximately 1 kilometre away, further magnetic highs have been located. In particular, the ground follow-up on the magnetic high to the west of the pit revealed an outcropping, strongly pyritic rhyolite porphyry. The magnetic susceptibility of the rhyolite at the surface is low, and the high magnetic reading is coming from a deeper buried source. To the northwest of the pit, then, is a black line described as a strong magnetic linear. This, together with the buried magnetic high west of the pit, become the two unexplained aspects of the geology as a result of the work to date. TerraSearch suggests that the strong magnetic linear is probably a deep-seated continental scale margin structure illustrated in their report and shown in the inset figure on this slide. Getting back then to the high magnetic contrast band that runs in a semicircular fashion through the ground mag survey area, this magnetic domain matches up with figure 43 of the report, with the strong purple band shown here, which is on the high magnetic end of the colour legend. Notwithstanding this, TerraSearch direct us back to the strong magnetic ore body at the pit, and the magnetic highs which run to the northwest and the buried magnetic high to the west. The geological model that best fits the field observations in the current state of knowledge is of a large magnetic body with moderate contents of magnetite, within which are pods and bands of high grade to massive magnetite. They also state that this amounts to a mineralisation envelope of some 10 million tonnes based on this initial geological model. When we overlay the magnetic interpretation illustration over the simplified magnetic domain figure, the hotspots match up. These three areas of high magnetic contrast are then identified further when we zoom in on this area, and now become the refined area of interest and focus, covering a distance between them of approximately 1 kilometre. There is some hypothesis that these three areas could link up as part of a larger underground ore body, although this is speculation. However, what the geological model was actually suggesting was that they may be manifestations of the same mineralising system. TerraSearch advised that these magnetic elements may be the manifestations of a larger intrusive-driven mineralised system. Soil and rock chip geochemistry suggests that a chemical zoning is present with iron and copper in the hottest magnetite-rich part, zoning out to lead zinc in the cooler sections to the north. The pyritic rhyolite in the west is a possible mineralised hydrothermal conduit. No geochemical anomalism has been located to date. However, as is the case elsewhere where similar pyritic rhyolite is gold-bearing, it is speculated that gold may be associated with the sulfitic rocks at depth. Whilst this postulation needs to be predicated by strategic drilling, scheduled in the short term, confirmation by this could lead over time to the discovery of a significant deposit. In this regard, any drilling exploration would need to progress to and comply with the various levels of JORC compliance. In September 2008, an extensive soil survey was carried out in the area around the pit, and in the area of the buried magnetic high to the west of the pit. 110 soil samples were taken as part of this survey. The conclusion of that survey included elevated iron, copper, lead, zinc and silver in the area of the pit, that the northern strike extent of the iron and base metals extended at least 200 metres beyond the pit, that the southern strike extent of the iron ended at the southern end of the pit, that the copper levels were highest in the central to southern parts of the pit, that the lead and zinc were highest to the northeast, that the pyritic rhyolite plug had low base metal readings and had an unexplained deeper magnetic source, and that the soil lines over the iron lead deposit are all anomalous. Discriminant analysis indicates samples at the end lines are still mineralised. Getting back to the pit, the skarn assemblages are dominated by medium to coarse grain granular epidate, quartz and magnetite. Magnetite is present as massive bands up to 20 metres wide, but down to less than 1 metre. Rock chip samples taken from the floor of the Iron Glen pit had iron readings of 40 to 50%, copper readings up to 3 and 3.1%, and silver readings up to over 30 grams per tonne. This photograph represents a massive magnetite skarn with bands of coarse sulfide, pyrite and chalcopyrite. You can see the green copper in that sample. And again in this sample here, a very weathered epidate magnetite skarn, the copper, lead and magnetite being evident. Here the epidote quartz magnetite skarn is on the left, cut by white veins of coarse fibrous crystals, possibly wollastonite. Looking then into the pit, we can see the trace of skarn banding in the eastern wall. The rock is very magnetic as well. If you throw a magnet at it, it will stick to the rock. As a further cross-section to the ground mag survey and soil sampling, an ASTA Landsat satellite imagery was obtained over the Iron Glen deposit. This further confirmed the existence of the anomaly and its northwest extension 1.5 kilometres from the pit. Further to TerraSearch's work in 2007 and 2008, they have recently produced an annual report for the Queensland Government on the EPM, which is dated July 2010. This further confirms earlier findings and recommendations. Of all the recommendations, the single most beneficial exploration activity to generate a greater understanding of the resource extent and the ore body in general is through drilling. To this extent, a drilling program has been scheduled for September 2010, consisting of 7 to 8 100-metre drill holes. Those recommendations of TerraSearch then were that in order to enable quantitative assessment of the mineral potential of the tenement, more sampling, drilling and other exploration work needs to be completed. The list of recommendations of TerraSearch included ground follow-up prospecting of the creeks to the northwest of Iron Glen, the extension of the soil survey to cover the whole of the mineralised area, the extension of the ground magnetic survey to cover any granite skarn contact to the northwest, ground evaluation of the limestone outcrops in the high range southwest, and drill testing of the magnetite body with an initial drill program to consist of 7 or 8 holes of approximately 100 metre depth. The infrastructure of the Iron Glen tenement is excellent, being located 40 kilometres south of the metropolitan city region of Townsville, which has a skilled workforce. It's within 15 kilometres of the Western Rail Line. It's within 40 kilometres of the deep sea port, which exports nearly $3 billion worth of exports, including bulk minerals and iron ore. It's within 20 kilometres of the Ross River Dam, which is the main water supply for Townsville, and a major electricity transmission line traverses 3 kilometres north of the EPM. A review of the key highlights again. Iron Glen resource contains high-grade iron ore, good levels of copper and silver, and a limestone deposit of some 30 million tonnes. It has excellent infrastructure. It's an easy startup with an established exploration team and strong management. Drilling is scheduled to commence in September 2010, which could significantly increase the value of the tenement. There is the potential to get open pit mining operations running quickly, and it's an Australian-based friendly project with a good land tenure system and increasing demand in world markets for the product. The opportunity, the potential high value increase of the tenement short term. For more information, Iron Glen Holdings is listed on the Australian Small Scale Offerings Board. Further information can be obtained from the ASOB website, asob.com.au/IGH. Iron Glen Holdings Limited invites sophisticated investors wishing to participate in this ground floor opportunity to contact Mr. Tony Pools on Australia 61 400 250 259. Any implied offer herein is an excluded offer pursuant to Section 708, subparagraphs 8 and 11 of the Corporations Act 2001. Thank you for your interest.